to the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mask Podcast. And this week on the podcast, I am going to welcome Matt from Victory High Performance. And I met Matt through Instagram. So I meet most of my guests is through Instagram. So Matt and I connected and said, you know what, let's go ahead and let's get on the podcast and talk. So Matt, how's it going? Welcome to the show. How you feeling?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
No. Thank you for doing this. I greatly appreciate, again, you just making the time for me because my time's kind of discombobulated right now. So I want, definitely show my appreciation for you with patience, understanding, and knowing like this guy might not be very well organized. I'll pick up the slack. So thank you.
You're doing great.
Thanks. For you with Victory High Performance, I guess the first question for me is, tell me a little bit about it. How does this come about for you, and where's it going for you?
Yeah, well, we're a strength and conditioning gym in San Jose, California, and our primary clientele is jiu-jitsu athletes or grapplers. It's kind of a long story as far as how it came to be, but I was fortunate enough to have a lot of good strength coaches growing up. I played hockey growing up, and I had like a little taste of martial arts, but nothing like I have now. And I always knew, like, if I didn't coach hockey, I loved being in the gym. It was something that I really enjoyed, and a lot of those people had a positive impact on me as a person and how I kind of grew up and learned about life. And so that was always in the back of my head. And flash forward, I guess 3 years ago, at that point, I had coached for the Sharks for 5 or 6 years, and COVID hit. We all had to adjust. And one thing led to another. Next thing you know, I have a gym in California, of all places, where gyms weren't looked highly upon, but we made it work. Training outside, training remotely, doing all the things that we had to do. And one person led to two, and two led to four. And next thing you know, we had our own space. And, we just moved in, I say just, feels like yesterday, a year ago, moved into our own 2,400 square foot spot in downtown San Jose. And now we're about 50 members, and I would say 80 to 85% of them are grapplers. So that's become our niche, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I absolutely love it. It's so fun.
Nice. So, basically COVID kind of really pushed you into this, which, for all the shit that we give COVID, you know what? It's actually kind of, it pushed us, a lot of us in the direction. So I don't want to say good for COVID because, it is what it is, but I'm glad you're able to, find that positive out of it. And not only that, especially in California with the restrictions there, it did sound like it was fucking chaos. So
it was a mess.
I'm in Maryland, and it wasn't too bad, but it was still a little confusing here because in some places you got like, oh no, you can't do anything. Everything has to be locked down. They're putting orange tape on doors so they'll know if you've been in there. And then there are other spots where they're like, man, you good. I think because of DC, because we have like what we call the DMV, where it's like Baltimore doesn't get counted in the DC, Maryland, Virginia chain. Baltimore is just Baltimore, and then the DMV is its own little thing. And I think over there they're like, oh no, we're like super locked down, and like like Annapolis, Baltimore, and all that. They're like, no, we're good. Just don't sneeze on me and keep training.
That's cool. I didn't know you're from that area. I'm actually from the DMV. I'm from Woodbridge, Virginia, so I'm on the other side.
Oh, nice, nice. See, all right. So there's that comfort there.
Yeah.
I think you're the third person now that I've encountered in the past 2 weeks. That's like through Instagram, jiu-jitsu in any capacity that's no longer out here. It's like, oh yeah, I'm from Silver Spring, or I'm from Tyson's Corner, around there. It's like, oh shit. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
that's cool. My parents still
Okay.
live there, so I go back every so often. But
Okay.
I've lived in California now for, I guess it has been 8 years. Um,
Okay.
so yeah.
Well, cool, cool. Now, when you dealing with primarily hockey, and you said you're with the Sharks, like coaching with the Sharks, the San
Mhm.
Jose Sharks.
Yep.
So, how did you get from hockey into martial arts?
Um, so my first run in with martial arts, I'm sure my parents put me in karate or something as a kid, like most
They
do.
all did.
Uh, I didn't stick with it. I don't know why. I have very vague memories of it. I'm not sure. I don't know what I held on to, if anything. Um, but then so as I was coming up, I grew up playing hockey in Virginia. Maybe 17 years old, I found a boxing gym, and I was there over the summer, to get in better shape for hockey. And knowing what I know now, that was the exact opposite thing that I should have done. And we can dive into that later. But in any case, that's what I did. And so boxing, if you want to count boxing as a martial art, was kind of the first time I had actively sought it out. And then the next summer, one of my friends uh, took me to a gym near our house in Virginia. It was called Gold Medal Grappling, and the pro there. So the head coach was Elijah Harshbarger, and then the pro was Chris McRae. Chris McRae was on The Ultimate Fighter, fought in the UFC for a little bit. So he was there, and he was like on the mats with us and doing the whole thing. And so he and Elijah really, they gave me my first taste of jujitsu, and it's nothing like what I'm learning now, here in California, but it was the first taste. And so I always had in my head, I was like, man, like that's pretty cool. Like, and I don't like getting hit in the head. So if I can avoid that, I will. When I came out, so I finished playing hockey in college, and then I finished college, and then I came out here to coach, and I was coaching for the Sharks amateur hockey division, so they're top 18 and 16 year olds. Um, and I just remember missing the challenge, missing the team atmosphere. And I know jujitsu is an individual sport, but it's a team sport. Um, and so I started researching. I was like, you know what? Like my brother's still in the army, but he was boxing a lot of the time. And I was like, man, like I love to do something like that, but like I said, I don't want to get hit in the head anymore. I'm past that. Um, and so I started Googling things, and I looked up, jujitsu in San Jose. And then you start to realize that there are names attached to all these schools. And then I started Googling the names, and Kayotera being right down the street, I see he's won 12 world championships. I'm like, I'd be stupid not to go here. And so I showed up, and the first coach I ever had was Kyle's brother, Kim. And he and Yuri Smois, who's now, several time world champion, several time ADCC champion. It's those guys on the mats. At the time, I have no idea who they are, and I'm just like, wow,
Of
these
course.
guys are kind of cool. I had no idea who, the kind of company I was holding, and so I fell in love with it, and I've been going every day, pretty much every day ever since. And I'll never look back. I'll be on the mats every day until the day I die.
That tends to be kind of the case with jiu-jitsu, with most martial arts. Well, kind of in that pocket of MMA style, Muay Thai, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, things like that. Most people get in and they love it, and they can't imagine being away from it. And I'm with you on the whole, getting hit in the head. It's like there's this weird toughness that people like to carry with, like, man, I'm tough. You can hit me all you want. It's like, yeah, that's cool now, but I don't know if you heard about CTE. That's a thing, and
Yeah.
not fun later.
Not fun at all.
But when you were playing hockey in college, where did you play at?
So I played briefly at Worcester State University in Massachusetts. It's
Okay.
a small D3 school, maybe 45 minutes outside of Boston.
I was recording last night for one of my other podcasts, and my friend, I always like to have stuff on in the background. I told my friend, I was like, hold on, I'm putting on a game right now. He's like, oh, he's thinking NBA playoffs. He's like, oh, who's playing? And I was like, oh, Carolina, the Hurricanes. And he paused for a minute. He goes, you fucking watching hockey? I was like, dude, I don't know if you know this about me, but like, I was a big hockey fan, like growing up. He was like, I'm originally from Detroit. And he's like, oh, yeah. Red Wings. Okay, never mind.
Makes sense.
Hockey town, blah blah blah. I was like, dude, don't say it like that. Like, we have been good for a while. Okay, relax. But there was a minute. We had our 25 years.
Yeah, that was quite the run there in Detroit.
Yeah. Then they were just like they were like, wait a minute. Detroit teams aren't supposed to be good. What are we doing? Stop winning. And then they just gave me another reason to cry. I was like, no, not you. Anyone but you. I thought we'd never lose you. So once you transitioned to the mats and you started really falling in love with grappling, what did you bring with you from hockey? If anything, to the mats that kind of maybe helped you a little bit in transitioning, or getting any comfort while grappling, or just doing any kind of work on the match period.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first is hockey is one of the only sports that you have to learn another sport before you can be good at hockey. Like skating isn't a natural motion, and it takes a lot of practice and several years to really, really master that. And without it, though, you can't play. And so, just I guess from a sense of like general athleticism, I've always been an athletic person, but hockey takes it to another level because of the complexity of the techniques that have to be used. The other thing would be like the speed of the game is really fast, and jujitsu's fast, but you can slow things down with the gi, and that I think that definitely benefited me. And then I guess lastly would be there's a certain toughness associated with hockey. I mean, guys play through things all the time. I'm sure watching Detroit come up, you've seen your fair share of pretty gnarly injuries. And, I've had a few myself that, we just had to play through, and you learn to be uncomfortable, even in, pressure situations, which is jujitsu, is being uncomfortable, especially for the first couple of years. You don't get comfortable until maybe 2 years in. So
Oh yeah, I think if I remember correctly, with Detroit, Bob Probert broke his leg in the game. Many players have broken their legs in the game and kept playing, but Bob Probert stands out to me for that, because like I remember hearing, I was like, wow, he broke his leg and kept playing. That's weird, because I twisted my ankle and was like, you know what? I'm just going to hang out over here on the sidelines. And now you see, a lot of stuff in the NBA where, players aren't even playing the full season because it's like, I got cramps. I'm not, throwing rocks at NBA players and completely calling them soft, but it's like, okay, well, look, you got guys that are getting pucks slapped at their face and they're not even wearing a mask. And like that, anytime I see somebody slide to try to like block a puck from going to, it goes like, oh, you're committed.
yeah,
Like super committed.
if you want, I'll tell you are you squeamish? I'll tell you my gnarliest injury story. If you are squeamish, I'll skip it.
I'm squeamish, but I love it. Share.
All right. Okay. So you talk about, uh, taking pucks to the face. That was the worst injury I ever sustained. It was my last year of junior hockey. I was in Texas. I was exiting the offensive zone. My teammate was entering the offensive zone. The puck had left. He was shooting the puck back kind of against the grain. I was skating this way. He was skating this way. And he shot it maybe 10 feet wide of me. It wasn't going to hit me, but it went off of an opponent's stick directly into my mouth. And I watched the whole thing. I was awake for the whole thing. As the puck's coming at me, I'm like, this is gonna suck. And it hit me, and my ears are ringing. The play's still going. I'm trying to shake it off. I'm like, what the hell? And I can feel, like, with my tongue, I feel my teeth, and they're not in the right place, but they're not loose, which was weird. I'm like, I tried to spit them out, and I couldn't spit them out. Play's still going. I throw my gloves off, and I tried to pull them out, and I couldn't pull them out because they weren't loose. And at that point, I start to think, I'm like, all right, something's really wrong here. And so I go down on my knees, and I'm like, just trying to figure out, like, what is happening. Meanwhile, the play stops. It's like all the way on the other end at this point. And, my coach comes out. He's like screaming at the refs because he sees me. I'm bleeding everywhere all over the ice. And kind of comes up, and he puts a towel on my face. I'm like, that's pretty bad, huh? He was like, yeah, it's not good. I'm like, oh, shit. So he asked me, he said, who do you want me to call? I was like, whatever you do, don't call my mom, because my mom will kill me. She was like, she told me all growing up, I pay for braces, and if you fuck your teeth up, I swear to God. And I'm like, all right. So, and so he's like, well, I gotta call somebody. Who do you want me to call? I said, well, call my dad, but tell him not to tell my mom yet. And so my dad was the buffer zone between, the rest of my family and I, and he was kind of taking in information and then diffusing it at the appropriate times. They took me into one of the locker rooms, and this is funny. You'll love this. They're on the other team. The coach's kid wanted to be a doctor, and so he'd follow the team around, and he'd ask the team doctors of all the teams, all the opposing teams, like, hey, if anything happens, can I watch? And they're like, yeah, sure. They don't ever expect anything like that to happen. So I go in the room, and then the team doctor comes in, and then the coach's son follows him. Hey, the kid must have been, I don't know, 10 years old. And I am pouring blood out my face and just cursing up a storm, what the hell, fuck this, I want to go play, whatever it is. And the kid is just like, was blown away, like, oh my God, I did not expect to see this. And the team doctor, he says, he was like, you gotta go, you're gonna have to go to the hospital. And I was like, stitch me up, I want to play. And he was like, no, you have to go to the hospital. And I protest, and he's like, you want to see it? And I'm like, no, I don't want to see it, just stitch me up, I'll put a cage on, I'm going. And he pushes me in the bathroom, and he shows me, like, puts me in front of the mirror. And at that point I look, and it had cut me open so wide that I could close my mouth and see my teeth. It was nasty, man. I looked like Two-Face from the Batman series. And
I was just thinking it.
yeah, it was so gross. So, like, it cut my lip open. That required 24 stitches to fix. 8 inside, 8 underneath, 8 inside, 8 outside. And then it had broken my jaw and my nose across this way. So my teeth had, like, they call it stage 4 trauma. So it had snapped my roots, but stayed in my jaw. And so it, like, broke my jaw back this way. And that was a horrific experience. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. After several hours in the ER, and they're poking in and looking around, like, oh, it looks, this is what it looks like. They're taking x-rays and all kinds of stuff. And finally, they bring in an oral surgeon. This is at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio. And he looks like a kid. He looked like he was my age. And I was like, either this guy is really green and I'm his test, or he's a genius. And it turns out he was a genius. I think. I mean, I had no root canals. I didn't lose any of my teeth. Nice. You can hardly see the scar. He was a really top-notch plastic surgeon. And in any case, I remember he took me into the oral surgery room, and he shot me several times in the mouth to try to numb everything. And then at one point he's like, all right, hold on, don't move. And I was like, don't tell me, just do it. And he was like, no, 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 seriously, like if you move, I'm gonna have to do this again and it's gonna be worse. And I was like, okay. And so I'm like gripping the chair as hard as I can, like just trying to stay as still as I can. And he takes this needle, it's probably like this big, and he puts it up into the roof of my mouth. Yeah, it was so nasty. It was the sharpest pain I've ever felt. It felt like uh you know in like the in like the old anime cartoons where like somebody gets sliced in half and it's
Yeah.
like and everything goes, like splits apart this way. That's what it felt like. It felt like my like right down the middle. I was like, "Oh my god, like how could that hurt any worse?" And then I found out what hurt worse, and that was like he laid me back at 5 minutes. He's like, "Hey, this might hurt, this might not, I don't know." And I was like, "What do you mean you don't know? Like you just put a needle in my mouth, like in the roof of my mouth, that hurt." He's like, "Well, there's no way for me to tell how your body's going to react to this much xylocaine." And I was like, "Okay, just do what you got to do, man. Like I know what's going to happen." I knew the whole night. I was like, "They're just going to have to reset my jaw. It's going to suck. Like let's just get it over with." And so the dude put his hand on my head and he put his other hand on my mouth and he pulled, and it took 3 tries to get my jaw back into place. So every time you like bite, okay, it doesn't quite fit, go back in. And I tell you, man, I screamed so loud. Like my coach and one of the billet moms, one of the host moms, they came to the hospital with me, and it was like a door, hallway, door closed, waiting room, door. They were outside that door, and they could hear me from all the way out there because it was gnarly. It was so painful. And so on the third time, I remember looking out. I'm like, "Hey man, hit the gym! Like, you gotta get stronger. This sucks. I don't want to do this again." But then eventually he ended up having to shave down a couple of my teeth and make sure they fit. And then he wired the top row. He like wired it across, not shut, but like just straight across. And then stitched me up and sent me home. And I went and got a milkshake, and I was at practice 2 days later. So
All right. So that fucked me all the way up.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you for sharing it. That was that just opened my eyes to a whole another viewpoint of life. I used to say wrestlers were lunatics and they're insane, and they are in their own right, as are grapplers. But like the fact that you're back at practice 2 days later is fucking nuts. So wow,
man, I remember watching. I think it was Brendan Morrison. He was playing for the Caps at the time, and he took a puck off the mouth, and he went to the bench and he pulled out 9 teeth and just played the next shift. Like he just pulled them out. He was like, "Fuck it, I'll get them later." And then he finished the game.
And hockey players, especially on the pro level, it's just a different world. It's like, oh, hey, guess what? My arm is broken completely. Yeah, well, you can come out if you want. No, I'm good. You looked at it, you saw it. Now go ahead, put me back in.
It's always interesting to see the injury reports after the playoffs, because there's always a broken foot, a broken hand, a broken arm, separated shoulder. So and so can't bend their knee, but it's wild to see what those guys put themselves through. But that's what it takes.
I mean, yeah, you're professional athlete. You're playing at the highest level, and you're out there for the championship. You don't become champion by saying, oh, I jammed my finger. I can't go on. It's like, what? Fuck out of here. Jammed your finger. Next thing you know, you got a guy out there again. You talk about put me back in there. Your face is exploded. You're like, no, I'm good. Just put me back out there. Which, I mean, I guess in one sense is like, it's like you were coherent enough. You're like, I can do it. But looking at it, it's like, no, there are children watching. I think they would be.
Yeah. They had to push me out of the rink. I I kept insisting that I stay till the end of the game, which I did. They 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 kept pushing me. They're like, all right, you gotta go to the hospital now. And they'd start walking. I turn around, walk right back in. I'm like banging on the glass, and they stitched me a little bit just to keep it closed. But you can see all the people in the stands are like, what the hell? Like, oh my God. But the game ended and everybody came out. We won the game and we're, all fist bumps or whatever. And all my teammates are like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, fuck it. We won. I don't care. So,
Yeah, at least you got the win.
yeah.
If that happened and then you all lost, it's like fuck.
Yeah.
You lost. You see what I sacrificed here, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Like, geez, Louise. All right. Well, how do we come back from that?
Yeah. You weren't expecting that when we signed on.
No. Wow. That's definitely going to get clipped and be part of the greatest hits for episode 200.
Cool.
Holy shit. So, damn, I'm like still reeling from that. So tell me a little bit about the program that you all kind of operate with. Like, what do you like? How do you start it off with? Like, let's say I come in and I'm like, look, man, I'm 45. I was just talking with my teammate today. We were talking about bench press. I was like, look, man, I was putting up 285 pretty easily. Now I decided I don't think I need it anymore, but obviously I do. I come walking into your doors. I'm a grappler. Like, give me a breakdown of how you're gonna try to help me and get back just to living.
Yeah. So the first step for all of our athletes is what's called a strategy session. And so we sit down and we talk about goals, medical, injury history. We talk about training schedule, work schedule, all the things that go into determining how often you're going to train and what you're going to want to achieve, right? Any potential limitations, whether it's previous injury or movement limitation, whatever that is. So after the strategy session, what we do is we schedule a movement and strength assessment. And so we will go through each joint one by one from neck on down to toes and just figure out, does each joint work properly by itself? Right. The theory or I guess philosophy would be independence before interdependence. So what that means is every joint needs to work the way it's supposed to work before you ask it to do a complex, ask an athlete to do a complex chain of movements. If you think about like somebody throwing a baseball starts in the ground, up through the legs, through the hips, through the torso, through the shoulder, through the elbow, wrist, and then out the fingers. And so if there's a break in that chain at any point, then things start compensating, doing things that they're not supposed to do. They do things they're not supposed to do. Eventually they break down. And that's where you see like a lot of injury or, a lot of injury patterns pop up. So we go through joint by joint, look at each joint, see, does it work properly or is there any pain? If there's pain, then we, talk about how to work around it and how to get you out of pain. After we do that, we go through what's called the functional movement screen, which is, the way I would explain it is it's an assessment that kind of shows us how each of those joints are going to move in conjunction with each other, because sports happen, it's not just a one joint sport, right? That doesn't exist as far as I know. And so we go through that screen and that shows us common movement patterns that we're going to see during the training sessions that are to follow. Again, we're looking for, how do joints work together? We're looking for imbalances from side to side. So maybe, one side looks really good and the other side doesn't. And then we can ask that question. We can say, okay, what happened here? And they can say, okay, well, remember we talked about my shoulder injury from 2 years ago and it never quite recovered properly. I'm like, okay, now I know when we program, we need to pay special attention to what's going on this side versus the other. And then we're looking for low hanging fruit. So that assessment is scored. It's a 0 to 3 scale. 3 being the best I've ever seen. 2 being good. It's fine. Maybe needs some work, but overall is fine. 1 being struggles or cannot complete, and then 0 being in pain. And so if I see any zeros or ones, like zeros, we typically refer out and we'll say, okay, like you should probably go to physical therapy before you do anything else, because this is something that's going to cause you pain when you move, and we don't want that. So let's get you out of pain first. But if I see any ones, then that's my cue to, when I build the program, I say, okay, like this was a trouble point for them. Let's address this now, because it's going to give them the biggest bang for their buck as early as possible. And then we do, a couple of strength tests. We do push-ups, pull-ups, grip strength, things like that, and just kind of see where people are at. And that, again, all of that information, everything we talked about during the strategy session, everything that we go through during the movement and strength assessment, all goes into a program that's built for you, your goals, your body, your potential movement limitations or injury history, whatever that is. And then we build the program, and then, people come in, they train with a coach. It's small group personal training, meaning you have the best of both worlds. You have an individualized program that's built for you, but you do it alongside a team of other people who are also there to get better, that are going to hold you accountable, that are going to cheer you on, that are going to, they'll be your support system as you do it. So anyways, that's how it works.
Okay, good. I like that. That sounds, hell, I wish I was in San Jose. That sounds amazing. And you actually answered, a question in there that I was going to ask about physical therapy, because as you're kind of going over, it's like, okay, are you, kind of like a can't talk, physical therapist, or, do you have, schooling in that? My buddy's wife is a physical therapist. So every time I go over, and there's always something wrong with me, and she sees me limping, she sees me favoring one side. She's like, "Okay, Dante, sit down." And I'm like, "No, I'm good." And my buddy's like, "Do it." You're not going to be allowed to eat until she makes sure you're okay. So just sit down and just accept it. And I think last time I went over, I strained my groin, and I was limping very, very heavily. But I tried to make it, I tried to be slick. So I went in, gave her a hug, like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I saw people heading out to the back, to the deck. I was like, "All right, let me just scoot over here." And my wife comes out later. I was like, "Hey, dinner's ready. Come on in, make a plate." I was like, "No, I'm good. I'll be all right. I'm fine." And then at the end of the night, we're leaving. My wife tells me, "Yeah, so she, I told her about your injury, and like right now, just rest." I was like, "Okay, as long as she doesn't, like force me, into treatment." I'm hard headed. So, but that all sounds amazing. And in the fact that, again, if you see a point where it's like, okay, we need to refer you out, go see a physical therapist, because, you get, individuals that are just like, okay, well, that's a problem. We can get through that, or we can fix that. And then they end up making the matters a little bit worse. So, that's really awesome. Good. So with everything that you're doing with it right now, and just kind of the time that's been that everything's been up and running, um, what's the I guess plan in terms of like growth? Because you say you have about 50
We're
members now,
yeah.
80% being grapplers. So, is there any thoughts of like, okay, I think we might be kind of getting a little tight in here. We might need to expand a little bit, or are you still finding your legs?
We've got space. The 2,400 square feet has been huge for us. Before this, we were in a 600 square foot warehouse spot, with, metal walls, and it was a time. We were there for 9 months, and then we quadrupled our space. And since then, I've hired a coach and an admin, and so like we're growing the team. And but I think realistically, we could fit probably. I would have to hire at least one other coach, probably two, and we could probably hold up to 150 members. Not at one time, obviously, like they come in and leave, but I think we can. I think 150 members is really the sweet spot for us. So we're still in growth phase. Um, I think by the end of this year, I would like us to be at about 75. and I would like to have hired another coach to help take on some of the new people. So
Okay, cool. So there's plenty of room for growth, and it looks like you're moving in that direction. So that's excellent. For yourself as a grappler, are you competing or have you competed? Because look, you coming from hockey, and the shit that you just told me is like, look, man, if you're not out there choking fools and slamming them, like I just feel like, oh man, I guess it was time to take a break. Or are you like, look, man, it's time to take it to another level. I'm a competitor at heart. Let's do it.
I love to compete. I competed a lot at white and blue, and I didn't do any majors or anything, but um, started to win some local tournaments and some, I guess, mid-major, if you want to call it, tournaments. And then I competed once at purple, maybe twice, and then COVID hit, and that shut everything down. And then I battled with injuries actually for a couple of years. My whole purple belt was pretty much injured, um, and so I didn't compete. I didn't compete anymore at purple. I got my brown belt in December, and I was like, you know what? Like, I want to get back to it. Let's go. And so I've done 4 so far this year. My goal is to do 10 at least. 15 would be really, really cool. So I am competing more. But I'm still learning. Like, I'm still learning how to compete in jiu-jitsu. Like, it's a different animal. It's not like hockey. It's yeah, it's different. So I'm learning every time, and I'm trying not to go into it and put so much pressure on myself. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself as a white and blue belt. I was like, I gotta win. Like, everything, I gotta win. I gotta win. I gotta win. If I don't win, then it wasn't worth it. And I don't think that was the right mindset. I feel like I've grown since then, and I'm trying to go into each competition, each tournament, well, with a goal. It's like I want to execute something, but I'm not putting so much pressure on myself. And if things don't go my way, I just take the lesson and move on. I gotta keep reminding myself that nobody cares. It's fine. Unless you're competing for, at the adult black belt, world championship level, nobody's going to remember this. It's fine. And so I feel I've grown in that way, where I'm not so tense, right? I just like, hey, let it happen. Whatever happens. You go back, look at the video, make the change, come back, do it again. I'm just going to keep running it back until I get what I want.
Yeah. I think that was a very important thing you mentioned there, is learning how to compete, because there is an important element there where a lot of us there's this mindset, like you said, at white and blue belt, there's this pressure that you put on yourself when you're like, man, I gotta win. It's all about winning. It's all about winning. When in reality, it's all about the lesson that you're getting on the mat. Because they say, you compete, one competition is, almost equal to about 6 months of, in gym training. So, but it's, even though we are told this and we know this, sometimes it is tough in our own mind to say, okay, just go in there to learn.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I want to win. I want that gold.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I don't want it to sound like I don't want to win, because I'm like everybody else. I'm fucking competitive, and I want to
Yeah.
win. But I'm, I think I've reached a point in my life where I'm trying to let my ego go. Even in training, like day-to-day training, like if I get tapped by a lower belt, it's fine. Like, I'm trying to put myself in positions that maybe I'm unfamiliar with, and there may be a blue belt or a purple belt who knows the position better than I do, right? Like, one of my best training partners, his name's Josh Beam. He competes a lot. Like, he works for PayPal, he works remote, and he just competes like every weekend, every other weekend. He's like going, going, going. And so when we first met each other at the gym, I'd whip his ass, and it was easy. And now he's one of my toughest training partners. Like, he goes so fast, and he understands. There are a couple of positions that he understands better than most people that I know. I would venture to say, I mean, he's got like near expert level comprehension of certain positions because he plays them so often in competition where people are giving everything they have to either get out of it or negate whatever it is that he's doing. And so when I train with him, I cannot let him have one single inch because he'll take a mile. And I'm okay with that. Like I like that. I like that I feel I'm able to learn from even lower belts at this point in my career. I don't feel so proud. Right.
Okay. I think, that's a very important thing there too, is I was just, again, talking to my buddy about this last night. It's funny because I was doing a horror podcast with him and we got to talking about ego and all types of weird shit. It's like, dude, I'm pretty sure people are going to listen to that podcast like, what? Like, tell me about the scary movie, dude. Stop talking about fights. But that's an important thing, because the ego, it's just such a weird thing, and we want to believe, oh, I don't have an ego. Everyone wants to believe they don't have an ego, but you kind of have to in order to get better.
Yeah.
It's impossible not to have an ego. It's just a matter of checking the ego and understanding, like you say, if you get tapped by a lower belt or you learn from a lower belt, that doesn't diminish your value. That's, it's called being a team,
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's also, again, something you mentioned too earlier about jiu-jitsu. Even though it is individual on the mat, it is a team sport. Boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, all of it. Because if you don't have that team to train with and build off of, you're not going to be worth a damn in your matches. So
yeah, you're only as good as your training partners, right? You're only as good as the circle that you surround yourself with, and
absolutely,
that's totally true.
Yeah, I have a friend. She's going to be competing. Actually, by the time this come out, she's probably competed this past weekend, and that's one thing that she and I discuss is, she's in Europe, so she's talking about her training partners there, and it's just tough for her because there's not a lot of females available, and the ones that are available, it's just tough timing, things like that, and she would get into these bouts emotionally about training and teamwork and stuff, and that's a conversation we have constantly. Is myself, I don't compete. I probably will go back to it, like with my schedule opening up now and being able to train more. I'll probably look into getting back out there, but I don't normally compete. But that doesn't mean I can't be a good teammate to those who are competing.
Yeah.
I think that's something that people should possibly try to realize, is like, even though you're there as a hobbyist and you're just there like, hey, I'm just looking to learn martial arts and I'm looking to build this confidence, and then you got your teammate who's like, okay, you want to roll, still be a good training partner to them. Don't be a dead fish, and don't be a dick either. Don't be like, trying to crank submissions. It's like, dude, they're competing this weekend and you just try to rip their neck off.
Right. Yeah.
So people that come into you, like, are there mostly the people that come in, are they already kind of athletes, like kind of with a system already in place? Or have you had some people coming in from like ground zero, like almost no training at all? And they're like, look, I saw a flyer or I saw you online and, it just seems like this might be something I can get into? Or are most of the people that come through already athletes that have some sort of a base?
Both and everything in between. There's no one that I'd say we see more than the other. We've had people who are brand new to jiu-jitsu, but have extensive background in like just being in the weight room. We have people who are black belts who had no experience in the weight room, and every combination. So I can't say there's one that really sticks out. But the whole, everything that we do is built to meet whoever comes through the door where they're at, right? And that's where when we go through the strategy session and the movement and the strength assessment, everything is all built is all there to build a picture so that when they come in, regardless of what they've done in the past, whether they've trained, there's a member that we have. I think he's been lifting weights for longer than I've been coaching in my career. So I've been coaching in one way, shape, or form since I was 16, right? And so he's been lifting weights for that long, right? He has an extensive history in the weight room, but he still comes to us because we have a knowledge base that maybe he's not familiar with, and stuff that there's stuff that we can help him with that he was unable to attain on his own. So it's all about meeting people where they're at. That's the key.
And speaking of ego, in that regard, have you had anyone come through that had an extensive history of, weight training and just athletics, and then they come in, even though they're asking for help, they're not really accepting it or listening? Have you ever encountered that with anyone?
No, I'm a big believer in your vibe attracts your tribe, and I'm not that kind of person. So the people that we get are hungry to learn. They're there for a reason, and even if they have more experience than I do in a certain field or an adjacent field, whatever it is, they're hungry to learn. And I find that that's really common in jiu-jitsu in general. Is just people are so hungry to just gain as much knowledge as they can. And so I would say that's probably a more likely scenario than somebody coming in and being like, I don't need this, because if they do, then they just don't last. They leave.
True. And I feel like too, if they come in and they're like, I don't need this, and it's like, well, why the fuck did you come in?
Right. Yeah.
Dummy. It was like, when you get people coming into jiu-jitsu and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna stand up. You guys can't beat me. And then it's like, oh, you get humbled real quick. You're like, I don't need this anyway. I'm going home.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Quick workout.
I think everybody's come across at least one of those in their time on the mats. Probably is somebody comes in, and I was it you who posted the meme today? It was like, guy, man, I can't remember where I saw it. It was something about a guy, a street fighter coming in, and
yeah,
that was you. I laughed. I was like, oh man, oh poor guy.
Yeah, it's like those still exist, oddly enough. And I was kind of that guy to a small degree. Like when I entered, I was open to learning for sure, but in my mind, I'm thinking, look, man, I played football for many years, basketball. I'm strong as fuck. Ain't nobody stopped me except for this 14-year-old kid. Ain't nobody beat me but that kid over there. He beat my ass, and I didn't know what to do. And then my first full class, the dude he choked me with my t-shirt. I was like, that was what really kind of made me question everything, is when I got choked by my own shirt.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know how it happened.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there thinking, it's like, what the fuck was that? And why am I here? And then at that time, I was only training once per week. So I had a week to think about it. And I sat there and I was like, do I want to? I've already committed, though. I've already signed up. And I was like, all right, let's go back and try this again. Let's drop the ego. And I think it took getting choked by my own shirt to release the ego and like, yo, you need to chill. Just go in here and learn from these dudes. And it's been cool ever since. I think I've gotten to the point where it's like so much so that I need to regain some of my ego. I just go in now. I'm just like, okay, I'm just here. I'm here to help the team. And it's like I get choked. I'm like, cool, good choke. It's like, yeah, you should be pissed that you just got your ass kicked. I'm not. like, are you okay? Like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, maybe I got choked and like lost some blood. The blood wasn't going to my brain, and maybe I'm just high right now. I don't know, but yeah, when I came in, I was that guy for a brief moment, and then I realized I'm not going to learn if I come in here trying to fight these guys and say that I'm better than you. And then there came this understanding of like, there's no such thing as I'm better than you, because there's one day I might know something they don't know, and they definitely will know something I don't know. So it's like, let's build on
Yeah.
each other and learn together versus coming in and saying, oh, well, I know how to do a better loop choke than you. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
So what?
like, and like it doesn't matter if you can't execute it.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna allow it now, you dummy. So there's I see you have a seminar upcoming
Yeah.
on May 13th. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And I guess that's kind of a good segue and a plug for that right there.
Yeah, absolutely. So our signature seminar is called Bulletproof Your Body, Win More Matches. It's built for grapplers. So Bulletproof Your Body, Win More Matches. We talk about common injury patterns in jiu-jitsu. We talk about how to mitigate those injuries through building mobility, strength, power, all of the requisite qualities that we look for in an athlete, prefer, an injury-free athlete, or one that if they do get into, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that you can completely eliminate injuries from any sport. That's not a thing. But I will say that there will be times, people who train with us, they find themselves in positions where they may have been injured but did not. They may find themselves in positions where they do get injured, and because they've done the work prior, they bounce back quicker. And that's ultimately the goal. Is we want to keep people on the mats as long as possible. And if we can share that with as many grapplers as we can, and hopefully they take even just one thing and do that one thing, then it may, help them stay on the mats longer, learn more jujitsu. Everybody's level goes up when people are staying on the mats, getting better. And that's our goal ultimately.
Okay, good. By the sounds of it, just everything that I've heard, it's like, dude, it sounds like an amazing program. It sounds like a lot of people can benefit from what you all do. I know I could more than likely benefit from what you all do. Not more than like, I could definitely benefit from what you all had to offer. So that's amazing, and I'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well, so that way people are aware. Even though I'm here in Maryland, somehow I have more reach in California. Somehow that's fucking weird. People
There's
don't like me over here.
there's a lot of jujitsu here. There's probably 50 academies in the South Bay, I'd imagine. I can think of 4 within 2 blocks of the gym that I go to.
Like, I always feel like over here, it's like, I think it's big business to be like, oh, we have 1, 2, 3, I think 4, like maybe 5, like at least 4 for sure, like very close down here on like Route 1, or I'm sorry, Route 2. And it's like, oh wow, like we got 4 gyms right here. Then you go to California, it's like, yeah, okay, you got 4 on that one road, dude.
Yeah,
You
they're on
got
every
4 in
block.
this neighborhood.
And it's even more, it's even more prevalent in SoCal too. So that's. Have you ever seen? Did you ever watch the documentary? Well, there's 2 that I always recommend. You've probably seen Choke, the Hickson Gracie
Yes,
story. Have you ever seen Roll?
I have not.
Roll's another good one. It's I believe it's that one's on the story of how jujitsu kind of came to California and how it how it blossomed, how the Gracie family knew. They were like, if we're gonna bring this to the world, we're not gonna be able to do it from Brazil. We're gonna have to do it from the United States. And where better than Los Angeles? Like that's where Hollywood is. That's where the center of so much influence is. As far as popular culture goes. So, anyways, that's a really good documentary. You can find it on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it's maybe an hour and 15 minutes, but well worth the watch.
Just made a little note on my dry erase board here, because unlike when I'm scheduling episodes, I like to write down at least notes from the podcast. Like, I need to just, like, my daughter was down here right before we started recording. There's a notebook. She goes, "Oh, what's this?" I was like, "Oh, it's a notepad. You can have it. Take it." Meanwhile, I probably should be like, "Hey, give me that. I need to start writing down stuff in this." But yeah, I'll definitely check that out. And there's always, there's bigger pictures to things, especially when it comes to the idea of like, okay, if I'm going to start something, that's fine. But I also have to be able to start something and make it grow. I have to be able to market it. I have to, build a following to it. You're not going to take this to Arkansas. I'm not trying to shit on the people in Arkansas, but I don't know. I've seen a couple movies and documentaries down there in Arkansas, and it doesn't look like there's a whole hell of a lot going on down there. So you're probably not going to try to start jujitsu in Arkansas. But, you bring jujitsu over to LA, hell, even Miami, your bigger cities,
Yeah.
basically, where you can, uh, kind of grow that popularity. I mean, yeah, what better place than LA? I mean, Hollywood. That's where it all kind of, when people are like, "Hey, I'm going to move out west and try to make it big," no one's saying that they're going to, Salem, Oregon. They're like,
Right.
"I'm going to LA.
Yeah.
I'm going to go be a star."
Right.
So,
Yeah. That's what they did.
I mean,
I'm at the end of the day, I'm thankful for it because if they hadn't done it, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. You think about all the things that had to happen for just for this to occur. It's kind of cool.
that's something I always try to remind myself of things. When you start looking at where your path has led you, it's like, well, you gotta, think of what happened here or who did this where. I mean, I remember when we first watched UFC. I had a friend who was doing Taekwondo back in high school, and his parents had rented UFC one for him from the local video store. So we all sat in the basement and watched it. Which the wild thing about his parents, like if you look at this family, this does not look like the kind of family that's going to rent UFC one for their kid. This is a very like middle America, like like mom, dad, two kids, a dog. It was like okay, cool, and they go to church every Sunday. Like okay, cool. Meanwhile, they're like, hey, go in the basement with your friends and watch this video of people trying to kill each other. I want to say we watched it maybe in 95 or 96. And even then, seeing it, we understood that this was something unique. But as kids, we're thinking, man, how does this continue to grow?
Yeah.
And, you continue to see a couple more UFC events pop up here. I think the first one we watched live was probably shortly thereafter. I can't even, it might have been number 5, maybe. And we were hooked as kids. We're like, yes, we want more of this. It just wasn't because we're kids. We're not patient. We want like this, like WWF, the WWE.
Right.
We want it every week. We want it every month. We want as much as possible. And it's great that the Gracies brought it here. The Fertitta brothers, buying the UFC and then, started an Ultimate Fighter reality series and really, really kind of putting that on the mainstream with MMA. But even when you're watching MMA, you're still seeing it's like, okay, these dudes are still, using grappling. They're choking each other out. They're,
Yeah.
they're arm barring cats. What is this? And I remember even before then in the 90s, because we're video game kids, it was like, man, it'd be cool if they had like a UFC video game. I remember my buddy was like, how would that even work? Like, how are you gonna like because the
Yeah.
grappling would not make sense, that how would they, simulate that on a video game? They figured it out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's wild.
so yeah, it's I'm glad that this sport has continued to grow. There's always talks about jiu-jitsu one way or the other. People were like, we want to see it in the Olympics, or we don't want to see it in the Olympics because it'll get watered down. The gi is going away, it's dead. And you got people that are resistant, like, no, the gi is fine. And it's like, look, man, just it's all grappling. So let's just love it and enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up here and you know, kind of get things set up. Matt, before we get out of here, are there any shout outs or mentions you want to drop?
Um, well, like we talked about earlier, our next seminar is April 29th at Solidarity BJJ. That's in South San Jose. I believe we start at 10:30. You can click the link on our bio on Instagram. You can find us on Instagram at Victory High Performance. You can find my personal Instagram at matt.jits.hew, Hew. Let's see, what else? We talked about May 13th being our next seminar on the schedule. That one's at Triune BJJ. That's in Santa Clara, California. So not too far away. Other than that, if people are looking to, they're grapplers listening to this, they're maybe dealing with pain or scared of being hurt on the mats, or have been hurt and had to spend extended periods of time away from the mats, want to compete, want to get better, want to take their jiu-jitsu to the next level, the first step with us is just to schedule a strategy session. So you can do that by clicking the link on our bio on Instagram or by going to victoryhighperformance.com. You'll see a big red button on the side. It says schedule a strategy session. If you click that, it'll give you all our calendar, our dates, everything there. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to help as many grapplers as we can stay on the mats, train harder, train longer, just enjoy life.
Awesome. I'll be sure to put all that information in the show notes. So, whether you're looking on Instagram, you'll see the links there. If you're listening to the show from Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever podcasts, I don't know where I'm going to be honest. I don't know where this podcast even shows up. I just know that when I look at the stats, I see a bunch of different things. I'm like, oh, everybody's listening to it from there. So you'll be able to find all the info in the show notes there as well. So be on the lookout. Otherwise, Matt, thank you again for doing this. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Making the time, because, like I told you before we started recording, without you all as the guest, this show does not function. So thank you for that.
Likewise.
And as always, to the listeners, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and finding this podcast. Thank you for following me on Instagram. This is all goofy to me sometimes, because it's like, wow, like I share stuff and people like it. So I appreciate everybody who's taking the time to listen to the podcast, follow Off the Mats or bjj.wiki and repost as well. So thank you, everyone. If y'all have any questions, concerns, criticisms, always feel free to reach out to me. You can find me at those Instagram accounts, bjj.wiki or Off the Mats Podcast. I've had some people email me at offthemats2020@gmail.com. Y'all can do that too, but it gets a little weird because I forget that I tell people to do it. So if I don't respond, it's not because I'm being rude. It's because I forget that I tell people to email me. And then when I get an email, I'm like, is this a scammer? Like somebody trying to steal my money? Like, all of my dollars, $8 that I have in my accounts. But yeah, definitely reach out. I'd love to give a big shout out to my team over at Nerd Rage Radio. I plug them every episode because if it weren't for Nerd Rage Radio, I wouldn't be doing podcasting. We just recorded episode 400 over there. So go give a listen. Actually, I was on episode 399, 400, and 401. So if y'all want to hear Dante say a lot of bad words outside of this, talk about comic books and pop culture, head over there. It's a good show. Those guys are doing great. Also want to give a shout out to my other podcast, So You Like Horror. We talk about scary movies over there. So if you're into that kind of thing, go check it out. We've been doing horror through the decades. We just wrapped up horror in the 1960s, which was a fascinating decade. And we're working on the 70s, which is going to probably be a two-parter because I'm a kid of the 70s and the 80s. I was born in 78. And all the horror movies that I recall growing up came from the 70s. So that's going to be a big episode. So stay tuned for that. And we'll also talk about The Evil Dead. So yeah, if you're into that, go check out the Instagram. It's So You Like Horror. All the words separated by underscores. And get into it. And like I always say, it's not for educational purposes at all. It's just conversation and entertainment because I don't really know a lot of shit, but I know that I watch a lot of horror movies and we have fun. Now, I want to give one last big shout out to Matt and his team over at Victory High Performance. Again, look for the links in the profile here on Instagram. Look for the links in the story, or not stories, but show notes. And just be nice people. Go over, give a follow, keep track, stay tuned. Go check out the seminar if you're in the area. Otherwise, I love you all. You guys are great. You guys keep listening, and we're going to keep making these shows. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.